I'm sure you, much like me, are waiting out April with eager anticipation for May. Why? Tears of the Kingdom launches on May 12th and is arguably the biggest, or at the very least one of the biggest releases of the year, perhaps in years, and for good reason. But that doesn't mean that April isn't filled with worthwhile games. On the contrary, I have a list of 5 games that are releasing this month that I think should aid you in the arduous wait for our newest adventure throughout Hyrule. March had some solid releases, which I covered in its own dedicated video. The Legend of Heroes, Trails to Azure, the Resident Evil 4 remake, the final Atelier Ryza game, and while April's games have a very different theme and focus, players are equally as excited to get their hands on some of what this month has to offer. Now, if you enjoyed this series and you want to remain up to date with new games, make sure to like the video, leave a comment with what game you're most looking forward to, subscribe to the channel, and hit that little bell notification. Before we discuss every new release I'm excited for, though, I want to take a moment here to thank all of our incredible patrons over on Patreon. You guys are incredible, and I appreciate your support. Also, if you have a moment, consider following me over on Twitch. I stream there every weekend. Now, let's go ahead, jump in, and see if we can't find something to waste some time in while waiting for Tears of the Kingdom. Raven's Watch is a top-down, isometric, roguelike action game combining intense real-time combat with deep gameplay and high replay value. In Raven's Watch, players take control of one of several unique pre-made characters, each with their respective weapons, skill selections, and unique play styles. From what I can tell, as Mrs. Sticks had played through, I think at the time of recording this, roughly 10 hours of the game after being given access prior to its launch into early access, the maps are procedurally generated, meaning that no single map should ever be the same as another, and every playthrough should feel different. However, the maps all still looked and felt very similar to one another, with the same dark aesthetic, the same enemy types, the same encounters repositioned across the maps. Yes, this makes the game feel less repetitious, but less repetitious is still repetitious. Combat felt delayed and at times unresponsive, and playing solo really felt like you were playing with a bit of a crutch, but this game is meant to be played cooperatively, and when played cooperatively, is a significantly more fun game, so I do understand why that was the case. Raven's Watch is launching onto the PS5 and PC, with the PC release via Steam on April 6, 2023. I'm a fan of zombie games, and by extension zombie TV series and movies. I've played more Dead Island than I would like to admit. It's one of the better cooperative zombie games out there, in my opinion. Which is why I'm incredibly excited to get my hands on Dead Island 2, the sequel to the 2011 original, set roughly 10 years after the events. The sequel to its 2011 predecessor, set roughly 10 years after the events of the original. I'm a little uncertain as to whether or not the game will ultimately satisfy or disappoint me, as development did begin way back in 2012 under Jaeger Development, who was removed in 2015 and then replaced by Sumo Digital, who was then also removed and replaced by Dambuster, who became the new developers in 2019. Evidently, things weren't working out on a multitude of occasions, which is slightly disconcerting, but I'm still so excited anyway. Dead Island 2, much like its predecessor, is a first-person cooperative shooter releasing onto PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, and PC on April 21st, 2023. Wuthering Waves is considered by many to be the first real competition Genshin Impact might face in terms of large, open-world action RPGs that are releasing fully cross-platform compatible. I know what you guys were thinking. Immediately, what sprung to mind was, wait, isn't Tears of the Kingdom going to be the first real competition Genshin Impact has in terms of large, open-world action RPGs? And yeah, that would be the case if Tears of the Kingdom were also releasing onto mobile, or onto PC, or both. Wuthering Waves is developed and published by Kudo Game, the same studio behind the incredibly popular Punishing Gray Raven. Wuthering Waves is a dark open-world action RPG straying from the formula that Kudo is known for, small-scale instanced action games. Punishing Gray Raven and further Wuthering Waves are both gacha games, unlike several of the other games included in this list. Thus, unlike games like Raven's Watch, where characters are unlocked through playing, or even Atelier Ryza from last month, where players recruit characters over the course of their journey. Characters are earned through RNG pulls. Where I enjoy mini gacha games, I'm aware some of you might not, which is why I feel obligated to make note of this. Kudo Game have some of the most fair gacha rates in any gacha game though, so I honestly wouldn't expect characters to be overly expensive or time consuming to obtain. Wuthering Waves is launching into global closed beta on PC, Android, and iOS devices on April 24, 2023. Honkai Star Rail is a free-to-play 3D anime-inspired RPG developed and published by Hoyoverse, the same studio behind the incredibly popular Genshin Impact and the less well-known but not lesser in stature predecessor, Honkai Impact 3rd. Star Rail ditches the fast, fluid combat that the franchise has become known for, and instead opts to tackle the game from a turn-based perspective, with a plethora of different characters, each possessing their own unique combat styles, weapons, abilities. Much like Wuthering Waves before it, this is a gacha game, and the final gacha game included in this list. I generally think that Hoyo has some pretty decent rates when it comes to characters. Not great, but not horrible by any stretch of the imagination. With the growing success and popularity of gacha games both in the East and West, it's no surprise that studios are continuing to roll out cross-platform titles with the same quality as console or PC exclusives. Honkai Star Rail is releasing onto PS4, PS5, PC, Android, and iOS on April 26, 2023. Mad World is an indie MMORPG set in a grimdark world where demons rule and humans live in despair with but a drop of hope for survival. This game isn't quite the spotty track record, with repeated delays over a period of years, confirmed and then revoked publishers, changes in game direction. Nevertheless, it was confirmed last week that it is fully releasing this month, so I'm excited to play it. This is a top-down, isometric MMO with a type of tab target combat. And while Mad World might end up utter garbage, as an MMO channel, I am obligated to cover it. Mad World is officially launching onto PC, console, Android, iOS, and pretty much every platform that has browser support, as this game is playable through its own dedicated client or via browser on April 27, 2023. I feel like I'm a fan of the larger Star Wars intellectual property, but not nearly to the extent that many others are. So when Star Wars Jedi Survivor was announced, I was excited, but that excitement was also a little tempered due to the rate with which Lucasfilm pushes out new Star Wars properties, seemingly every other quarter. Survival is a successor to Fallen Order back in 2019 and continues the story of Cal Kestis as he struggles to stay ahead of the Galactic Empire. 5 years have passed and now Cal has a beard. Sexy. The sequel has chosen to maintain many of the gameplay elements present in its predecessor, with new elements introduced in the form of combat, along with larger, more expansive maps featuring more NPCs, in an effort to make the game feel more alive. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is developed by Respawn Entertainment and published by EA Games, however, will be the last game released through them as their exclusivity contract with Lucasfilm expires towards the end of 2023. Star Wars Jedi Survivor is releasing onto PS5, Xbox Series, and PC on April 28, 2023. And that's everything. Some of the best looking games slated to release fully this month, which isn't to say there isn't other titles that look equally as good or potentially even better. Admittedly, I probably missed one or two. That's bound to happen. If you're more interested in MMOs or gacha games though, I got you covered with 2 different videos on screen right now. One featuring every MMO releasing this month, and one featuring every gacha game releasing this month. Yeah, I got you covered.